Cycled memes from our Aunt Margie was unusually quiet. The last message in there was Maya's. Let me know when you all are ready to take some accountability. No one responded. No haha reactions. No snide remarks. Just a vacuum of guilt pretending to be peace. I wasn't invited, of course. Not that I needed the invite. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I didn't need to force a smile through another dinner where Ava's career was celebrated like a Nobel Prize and mine was ignored. I didn't need to listen to my mom laugh at jokes about me, or hear Uncle Ron say things like, Oliver's always been sensitive, like I was some malfunctioning appliance. I was free now. Free from obligation, from expectation, from the heavy weight of being the family's emotional punching bag. But I wasn't done. Not yet. See, the recording I sent out at Thanksgiving was just the beginning. It had shaken their image, forced conversations they didn't want to have, but it hadn't truly forced them to change. They were hiding now, licking their wounds, waiting for the drama to pass. I could feel it, that smug, simmering belief that eventually I'd fade from memory and they'd reclaim the narrative. So I made sure they couldn't. I started with the money. Quietly, methodically, and without warning, I called in the favors. That $3,000 loan to Ava? I sent her a formal letter through my lawyer, reminding her that while I had originally treated it as a gift, the recent revelation of her lies about escaping an abusive relationship voided that understanding. She was still with the guy. By the way, he showed up to Thanksgiving in my seat, laughing with my mom. I gave her 60 days to repay. No threats, no interest, just a paper trail. I canceled the recurring bank transfer that had been covering part of Uncle Ron's property tax. He never asked for help directly. He was too proud for that. But a few years ago, he hinted at tough times, and I stepped in. Every November, like clockwork, I'd send the amount due. Not this year. On December 3rd, his bank declined the payment request. My mom, though, she was the biggest one. For 5 years, I'd been covering the lease on her car. She never thanked me. Not once. It was expected. She made it clear that, as her son, it was my duty. I let it slide for too long. She didn't know the car was still in my name. On December 10th, I repossessed it. The phone calls came in like fireworks. First Ava, shrill and furious. Then Uncle Ron, trying to reason with me like I was some angry child. And finally, my mother. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just called and said, "So this is who you really are?" And I replied, "No, this is who you made me become." Click. Christmas Eve came. I didn't sit alone. I spent it with Maya and a few of our mutual friends. We made dinner together in her apartment, lit candles, played board games, and exchanged gifts that didn't need to impress anyone. It was the warmest holiday I'd had in years. Around midnight, Maya poured us each a glass of wine and sat beside me on the floor, pulling a blanket over our legs. "They called me," she said softly. "Let me guess," I said. "Damage control?" She nodded. "Your mom said I was choosing sides, that I was tearing the family apart." "You are," I said. "The part that needed to be torn down." She leaned her head on my shoulder. She also said something else, that she was going to set the record straight. I sighed. Of course she is. The next morning, I found out what she meant. My mom wrote a long post on Facebook, another performance, another attempt to flip the script. She talked about how families go through hard times, how sometimes private pain becomes public, and how some members are easily manipulated by false narratives. It was a masterclass in polished denial. No names, no specifics. Just enough ambiguity to draw sympathy from people who only knew the version of her she'd curated for years. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Because by then, the truth was already spreading on its own. Aunt Laura posted her own status, short, but pointed. Sometimes the only way to fix a broken family is to stop pretending it's not broken. Proud of you, Oliver. Daniel posted a screenshot of one of the texts my mom had sent him years ago, bad-mouthing me right after I helped him pay for college books. The caption was simple. We all saw it. We just didn't want to admit it. More and more people, cousins, old family friends, even one of Ava's college roommates, began commenting, messaging, reaching out. People I hadn't spoken to in years were apologizing, telling me they'd noticed things but didn't know how deep it went. It was like lifting the lid off a pressure cooker. Everyone had stories. Everyone had scars. And now, they weren't afraid to share them. A week after Christmas, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. From my mom. It wasn't an apology. It was a warning. She said I was destroying the family's reputation, that I was making enemies I couldn't afford, that there were consequences to embarrassing people in public. It read like the final act of someone who had lost control and didn't know how else to claw it back. I folded the letter once and dropped it in the trash. I didn't need to fight her anymore. The truth was winning on its own. By the time New Year's Eve rolled around, the family had split into two camps. There were the ones who clung to the old ways, defending my mom, pretending the recordings were taken out of context, dismissing every call out as drama. And then there were the ones who finally opened their eyes. They started organizing their own gatherings. Maya hosted a brunch in January and invited everyone she trusted. Over 20 people showed up. Uncle Ron wasn't one of them. Neither was Ava. Neither was my mother. I've had to grieve, in a way, not just the loss of a family I never truly had, but the version of me that kept waiting for their love to come wrapped in approval. I let that version die, buried him with the guilt, the people-pleasing, the endless ache for validation. Now I'm living. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since high school. I launched a small freelance business. Maya and I are closer than ever. And every so often, someone reaches out. Someone who saw what happened, who recognized their own family in my story, who says, "Thank you for saying something." I've felt this way for years. So if you're reading this and thinking about the family members who mock you, who use your love like a leash, who only call when they need something, listen to me. You don't have to stay in that house just because your name is on the mailbox. You don't owe anyone your silence to keep the peace they never gave you. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stand at the front door they slammed in your face, turn around, and never look back. I didn't lose a family. I shed one. And in the quiet that followed, I finally heard my own voice again. Clear, unapologetic, free.